What's going on, world? Welcome to episode 2 of the Maroon Bison presents the Southern Comfort Podcast.
Yeah.
Kev, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I think this is fun. It's cathartic, and some of the feedback that we've gotten so far, it seems to be that way for some of the folks that have heard us too, and I think that's important during this moment because I just kind of feel like a lot of people are like, I don't know what this is or what to make of this.
Yeah, so, folks, if you're listening, right, like Richard McDaniel, once again, episode 2, and I know we have a lot of new listeners. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College.
And I am a proud Howard Bison.
And yeah, so, Maroon Bison is a merge of our two proud institutions, historically black colleges, that have been known to produce, civic leaders at the forefront who have helped pave the way for us right now, right? Like when you think about alum for Morehouse, I can name the ones of Dr. Martin Luther King, Mayor of Atlanta, Maynard Jackson, and now we have U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. We have a congressman in Sanford Bishop, right?
Yeah.
We can continue to name on the political landscape, and then they're just people, the unsung heroes that you may not have ever heard of, and I think Kevin and I are some of those unsung heroes. But when you talk about alum for Howard,
Yeah.
Thurgood Marshall.
You had Thurgood Marshall. You had Kamala Harris. You had Mayor Reed, Mayor Young. So a lot of overlap. With Atlanta politics and just the politics in the South, and I love it, that university, and you find this, and I know we've talked about this too with Morehouse, but you find this with just a lot of HBCU graduates. It really does end up being very formative years, and I can't imagine for everything that I've been able to do after college there being any better preparation. And one of the things I always say about Howard that I think is true of HBCUs, especially like the top ones, like a Howard or Morehouse or a Spelman, is that you don't leave there saying you can't do something.
Yeah, definitely. You find a way.
You find they literally they gonna get you out of that.
Yeah.
And they do a really good job of preparing you to be the only one.
Yeah.
Because we can talk about throughout our political careers where there were times where we were the only one sitting at the table, the only one
Right.
in certain rooms, in certain spaces, and there's a responsibility that you have. There's a way in which you have to show up. There's a way in which you have to navigate certain situations. And for me, a lot of that training came from Howard.
Yeah. And it's interesting. President Obama mentioned it on a podcast where he said, I learned when you sit at these tables with some of these high-ranking people, you realize they don't know what the hell they talk about.
No, and they're not that impressive.
And you belong there. You belong in the room.
There. That's
and it's the same thing with us, right? Like I always said, because of Morehouse was the pantheon for black men to succeed, right? And if you struggled at Morehouse, you were going to struggle in the real world. But if you just did okay and were average at Morehouse, you were going to do tremendous things in the world. So, again, our institutions help prepare us for what we are facing now, what we have faced. And then I guess when we got in those rooms, we realized, this shit came easy.
Yeah. That
honestly,
you were very prepared, and I remember, my first big campaign. It was the Obama campaign, and it was being in Iowa. I'd never been in Iowa. Completely unlike any place I had ever been. At that point, you get dropped into the state, and you just have to organize around this thing called a caucus, which I don't know anything about. And there are not a lot of people that look like you, more than what people think. in Iowa that are black, but not you certainly are not anywhere near the majority, and just had to figure it out.
So let's touch on that a little bit because I was never a fan of Iowa, and I said, I told them don't send me there, and it wasn't because
And I begged to go.
right
Yeah.
you begged to,
Yeah.
again we have a lot of similarities, but where we differ on some things,
Yeah.
Iowa's one of them.
Yeah.
But you probably don't really give a rat's ass about Iowa now.
No, I do. It'll always be a special place for me because I was there for
Skip.
the historic,
Okay.
Iowa
Okay,
caucus
okay.
and that whole moment, and Iowa set the tone for that presidency being able to be possible, and so I'm still in touch with my precinct.
Yes
cap,
and
so
no.
what do you mean no? There was no. We wasn't gonna happen if we didn't win Iowa. He wasn't gonna be president. Barack
But
Obama wouldn't be president if we didn't win Iowa.
but again, that's BS. And people always say, "Well, Iowa sets the tone for the country." No, it does not.
For him, it
For
did.
him, it did.
I think.
Yes.
I think. It has lost its I mean, clearly, yeah, it's lost its influence. It's not true necessarily the case that you can't still win the presidency if you don't win the
So
Iowa caucuses. But in his case, he had to.
would you say, because of Obama, it took Iowa off the map eventually? Because after his 2 terms, right, there was nobody doing the Iowa caucus for the second term because you don't run against a sitting president.
Mm-mm. I don't think that's what did it because Iowa has been through periods like that before, where the caucus wasn't as robust, and then the next cycle when it was more prominent. Like remember when Clinton was running in '92, he didn't compete in Iowa because Tom Harkin was running, so there was no
Right.
point in doing it, right? And then '96. It's an incumbent again, so that's 2 cycles right there. But by the time you got to in 2000 was a little bit of a number because you had Gore, but it came in 2004. Okay, by the time you got 2004 though with Kerry, it was back to its promise. So it goes through those periods.
But it went through those periods. But again, Iowa is 10% black, if that.
No, not even. I
5.
doubt it. I don't remember, but I doubt we got double digits there.
But and my argument was always, it doesn't represent the rest of the country because it doesn't have a high minority population.
Mm-hmm.
And in a time now where we are really talking about minorities at the forefront of issues and at the table when it comes to political campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
right? Iowa has been wiped off the face of the map now. South Carolina is now the first primary for the Democrats.
Yeah, and this is an interesting conversation because we're gonna have a new DNC chair.
Who
Here
more likely is going to be
soon.
from the Midwest.
It's gonna be from the Midwest, but I think the whole, I think that whole system needs to be relooked at. And I think there are a lot of other states that would be good states. I think Georgia would be a good state. I think Georgia would be a good state for early state. No disrespect to South Carolina. I think Maryland
Yeah.
is also a good state to look at that, because if you're looking for the Iowa, New Hampshire kind of vibe, but you want it to be a little bit more diverse, Maryland. It's a small state.
So you say
that is
Maryland.
diverse.
It's a small, but it has a high population.
Yeah. But you can move around, like you can do like a house parties program in Maryland and it makes sense. I don't know that you can do a house party program in like North Carolina and move around that whole state.
It's interesting because we've done statewide campaigns and local campaigns in Maryland together.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Eastern Shore.
Yeah,
It's tough to get to,
it is.
and it's like untapped, untouched territory when it comes to campaigns because again, it's tough to get to.
It's tough to get to, and there's a black population out there as well.
There is.
That gets overshadowed by Prince George's County and Baltimore.
I never looked at Maryland as a place that would be a good early state?
I think it would be a wonderful.
Why not Virginia?
Still kind of big. I mean, because you got to look at too. Like one of the things they look at is you don't want to pick one of the big expensive states because then you are limiting
Spending a lot of money.
participation of the candidate. Like only the well financed candidates have an opportunity at that point because it's so expensive.
That's true.
Maryland, you know, you do have that DC media market that's very expensive. The Baltimore market is a lot better, and that's pretty much it. But those two are 98% of the state. But it's a good state where you can do grassroots work, and it's a good border state for us to build up even more capability to help in Pennsylvania races. But I know that's really like in the weeds, but yeah.
Well, so you getting back to Iowa, Corn
Mhm.
State,
Mhm.
right? You were an organizer on the ground,
Yep.
stopping for this unknown candidate,
Unknown candidate.
black guy,
Yeah.
where I was a big Hillary person.
Yeah.
And I was a Hillary person because, hey, the Clintons,
Yeah.
Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My man.
Yeah.
My mother loved Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
As I got older, especially in college, I had a couple of interactions with President Clinton.
Yeah.
Because of my mentor, former UN ambassador, former
Yeah.
mayor of Atlanta, Andrew Young.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he helped me get through college, and he was great friends with the Clintons.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton came to one of his birthday parties, and I was fortunate enough to be there and in the
Wow.
building and sitting at the table, like you the
Yeah.
man,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But he was the man, and
Yeah.
even when I started working on Secretary Clinton's presidential campaign,
Yeah.
I had many interactions with him, and it
Yeah.
got to the point where his chief of staff, who always traveled with him,
Yeah.
would say, "Okay, you got it. I trust you."
Yeah.
You know, and it was almost I had free will to take him wherever I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is great. So, what was that like? You in Iowa, being from Alabama, kind of something similar, but not really similar, but
It's-
kind of.
Yeah. Well,
Stopping for a black man against,
I know, wild, right?
you know.
Well, so for me, it was really interesting because I interned I was when I was at Howard, I was a journalism and poli-sci major, and so I was going to be a journalist.
Journalist.
And then what changed my mind was I did an internship with Hillary Clinton. One of my professors at Howard, we used to work for Hillary while she was first lady, and she helped me get an internship. And that internship is what made me think about politics and not covering politics as a reporter, but actually wanted to be a practitioner. And so because of that internship, I didn't change my major because luckily the skills are transferable, but I definitely changed my outlook for what I wanted my career to be. And that is because of my experience with Hillary Clinton. So, but then I also, when I graduated, I did a political management training program that was chaired by Barack Obama through his Hope Fund PAC. And what they do is they take diverse kids, they teach you everything you need to know about a campaign, and then they help you get your first job. So my first job out of politics, out of college, was with a mail firm that I got because of my participation in that program. And one of the partners who ended up being a mentor to me literally told me, we weren't even hiring. I took this interview because Barack Obama's office called and said, we have this kid we'd like you to talk to. And you did so well in the interview that I just created a position for you. And so by the time it got to the point where they both were going to run for president, I had affiliations with both and felt some loyalty to both. But for me, I didn't know if Barack was going to win or not. All I knew was he was everything that people said they wanted in a president, and if he was willing to try and give it a shot, then why couldn't I,
Yeah.
take some time to do it? And it ended up being this experience that unlocked so much in life. So I actually turned down a job with Hillary's campaign to take the Obama job, and we were down, I don't know, probably like 40 points at that point
Mm.
in the polls. But it started with Iowa, and it ended up being one of the most formidable
Victories.
victories and just experiences of
But
my life.
but was that your introduction to politics? What was your first?
My first introduction to politics was so growing up. My mom she used to run a feeding program for through our church for seniors, and one day I was out delivering meals, and one of the seniors said, I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for bringing this. I used to get food delivered from from the city, but they don't come like they used to. And she was talking about Meals on Wheels, and so I went back to my mom and I said, "Well, Mom, I, why would that happen? Like, why
Right.
would they ever cut food for seniors?" And so my mom was the type, well, is the type, where she's not going to just explain things to you. She makes you go read it and look it up for yourself. She said,
Yep.
so she said, well, that's the city program. They probably just cut it. And I said, well, why'd they cut it? Well, I think you should go do some research and you come back and tell me,
Yeah.
right? You need to learn. And so that set me down this path of learning about government and politics. And then I got into campaigns because I'm like, well, how do these people get to sit there that make these decisions? Because I'm still trying to understand why y'all cut funding for meals for seniors.
Yeah.
And so it was that experience that started it, and I just got obsessed.
That's interesting. It's funny how both you and I revert to, well, because my mom,
My mama, yeah,
right?
my mama said.
Right, my mama
Yeah,
said,
my
right?
mama said.
And it's funny you
Yeah.
mentioned that, 'cause how your mama, we call
Mm-hmm.
mother, how your mama made you go look it up and do the research for yourself.
Yes.
It's my mom was the same way.
Yeah.
Hey, Ma, what does this mean? Go
Yeah.
look it up.
Go look it up.
How do you spell? Go look it up.
Go look it up.
Right? It wasn't, I'm not finna tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're finna learn how to fish.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
So that's interesting. And it's also interesting that your mother kind of was the catalyst to introduce you into politics, the same with me.
Yeah.
My mother took me into the booth with her when she voted.
Wow.
Right? And it's just like, this is why I'm voting for this person. This is why I'm voting. And, I had those questions. But for me, in third grade, my teacher, Mrs. Steve, one of the best teachers I've ever had, because she always challenged us beyond the level that we were at. So she made us find an article in the AJC in the paper that dealt with the government and that we had to write a paper on it. And we just did it and didn't know anything. But I think four of us, I never forget this, four of us, I actually remember the girls' names who were along with me. Our paper got published in the AJC.
Wow.
And we went to go spend time at City Hall with the mayor at the time. And the mayor at the time was Bill Campbell.
Yeah.
And my paper was on a bond referendum about water in the city. And I just, and I wished somebody would have clipped it out and saved it, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I'm sure I can go find
Yeah,
it.
you can get it. You can go in the archives.
But you just being in City Hall, being in his office, and hearing him and seeing him,
Yep.
again, black man,
Yep.
leadership,
Yep.
right? Again, the superintendent,
Right.
black at the time was a black woman, right? My teachers was black, my principal was black. And so just seeing that and seeing the mayor and how he operated and him, hey, can you get me this and get me that? And I was just like, oh, he fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was kind of my introduction to politics. But also, my mother used to have to moonlight as the Atlanta School Board secretary because she took great notes.
Yeah.
And I would sit and go to school
The
board
meetings. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sit back and just watch.
Yeah.
And hear him argue or hear him talking about discussion or
Mm-hmm.
see the public comments,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And was always interested in it and didn't work my first campaign until I got to college,
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
But once it was my freshman year, I was hooked.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I started around that time. I started getting interested in campaigns. Judge Ralph Cook, he is the second African American to serve on the Alabama Supreme Court. He happened to go to my church, and he and his wife actually helped me pay to go to Howard. Because he's a Howard grad as well, and just took an interest in me. But when he had to run for to hold his seat on the Supreme Court, he was appointed. He had to run to hold it. I remember working on his campaign. My uncle Ron. We just did some work. He's now a tax collector.
Tax collector,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
In Alabama. He ran for mayor, and my mom actually let me start college late to be able to finish working on Uncle Ron's campaign, and I just kind of continued to do them throughout college. I would come home and do city council races in the summer, and I got involved in DC races and stuff like that. Like I said, my Hillary internship. So it was already, and as a journalism student, I was only covering politics, but eventually I just did the hard switch and got over to the other side.
So let's fast forward, because I'm pretty sure we'll touch on Obama's administration in other episodes. Let's fast forward to 2016, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You and I were both on the Hillary campaign together. We would talk back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You would, I would call and complain to you about the hell are y'all doing, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you would tell me.
A lot of those calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would tell me, well, I did a memo, or, we're sending a couple $1 million to Nebraska. And I'd be like, Nebraska? Bruh, we could win Georgia.
I was like,
And y'all they just were not budging. They didn't believe in the South. And it's funny because, again, President Clinton, WJC, he came down for a visit and expressed to me his concerns about what the campaign wasn't doing, and asked me how I felt. And, it's one of those moments where you're supposed to say the comforting line.
yes.
Listen, I felt like I had a good enough relationship to tell this man the truth. And I was like, bro, I don't know what they do. And I poured my soul out to him. He was like, I'm looking at that too for you. And so I think I called you right afterwards, right? And told you, I think that's what you was like, man, I don't know what's going on. And that night, election night, there was a real hope that we had this, that we were going to squeak it out.
Yeah.
And I'm in Atlanta. We got this nice little party going on.
Yeah.
Hosted by the state party.
Yep.
Were you in New York, or were you still in?
I was in North Carolina
Okay.
by that time. Yep.
And what was your feeling when the numbers were?
So I was like you in the sense that I thought we were going to win. I thought that there were definitely problems with the campaign that I was well aware of and intimately familiar with.
Yep.
Because those blue wall states were my battleground states.
Yep. For the people, what is a battleground state?
So a battleground state is that handful of states. Is usually about 8 states that ultimately determine the presidential outcome of the election, because they literally can go either way.
Right.
So Georgia is now I think Georgia now classifies as a battleground state, whether or not the party will continue to invest here the way that they should to make sure it's resourced the way it needs to be resourced to be an actual battleground state. We'll see. There's more that I want to say on that in a little bit. But it's those handful of states that can literally go either way that ultimately determine the outcome of the election.
So for those who don't know, battleground states back then, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
New Hampshire,
New Hampshire, doesn't make any sense. Uh,
North Carolina.
North Carolina, Florida was not at
No,
that anymore.
not for Hillary.
Uh,
Well,
Ariz-
that's not true. It was in our program. Yes, it was.
Arizona was the one.
Arizona was, yes.
I think that's all of them. Colorado, maybe.
Nevada. And Colorado. Yep.
And so that was in 16.
That was in 16.
And you had and they break them up in clusters.
Yep. Pods. Yep.
Pods.
Yep.
And so you had a pod. You were responsible for a pod.
I was responsible for a pod. I had New Hampshire. I had Michigan. I had Wisconsin. I had Minnesota. I had Iowa. Who am I forgetting? Did I say New Hampshire?
North Carolina.
I had North Carolina.
That was it.
And I had the Nebraska,
Yeah.
that second congressional district in Nebraska.
And so, I think that night when you saw the numbers for Michigan
Yeah.
roll in, you kind of reverted back to what you were trying to stress them to do.
Yeah, we were. So, actually, the first time I knew there were problems was Virginia. It was taking so long for Virginia to get called, and by that point, Virginia isn't really thought of as a battleground anymore, and we had Tim Kaine on the ticket, so we should have been running away with Virginia. So that was my first sign that there was some issues, and Michigan and Wisconsin were supposed to kind of be our
Right.
break in case of fire states. So once we got to the point of the night where we were saying, oh, if she just pulls out Michigan or she just pulls out Wisconsin, we can still win it. That's when I got very concerned, because I knew that our programs were not the strongest in those states. There was not even really advertising, particularly African American advertising, until the final weeks in Michigan and in
Right.
Detroit. And so I just knew infrastructure-wise we had not done everything that we needed to do to be successful there. And so once that started happening, I saw these people that still wanted to be hopeful, but I knew what under the hood looked like in those places.
So,
and I was like, I don't know that we're going to win
Would
this.
you say that they were taking the black vote for granted?
Not. I wouldn't say for granted. Oddly enough, the Clinton campaign was one of the best experiences I ever had as a black staffer on a campaign, in terms of resources, in terms of access
I will say that.
to leadership, in terms of their listening to it. It was one of the best experiences that I had. Quite frankly, it was better than the Obama campaign, and the candidate was black. So, so it wasn't. I don't think it was took us for granted. I just think that they just made some strategic errors in not recognizing. And I can't now. Did I have disagreements? Did I have things that I advocated for? Yes. So I can't say they. I have to say we, because I was a part of it. I think we just overall as a campaign just made some strategic errors in where the electorate was and where black folks was, and
Right.
we thought that, the affinity that folks have for the Clintons, that black folks have for the Clintons, and also the fact that we were running against Donald Trump's crazy racist, we thought that would be enough, and it wasn't. It's when you started to see the emergence of those trend lines of something that we say all the time, which is that economics trumps racism.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, this dude's a racist. That's a disqualifier. It used to be
What
with
does
the
it have
black
to do
vote.
with my money?
It used to be a disqualifier with the
Yeah.
black vote, but if Trump has taught us anything, is that it isn't. Economics trumps racism. We don't care.
Every day.
We'll doesn't matter that he's racist. He can get enough of those votes to be dangerous.
It doesn't matter if you're black or white. What matters is what green is coming.
Yeah, what green is coming to the table. And so when we lost that race, I remember literally going for a walk, literally in the woods, like the next day, and I remember telling my wife, I'm just gonna turn my phone off. I'm fine. I'm not gonna hurt myself or anything, but you won't be able to reach me for a little while because I just have to just kind of go process this. And I felt like I let the country down. I felt like I let Hillary down. I felt like she was capable and smart and prepared and did everything she should have done and would have been an amazing president.
Yes.
And I just think that we owed her better than she got.
It's funny you say you feel like you let. When we first talked about this, you said you feel like you let people down.
Yeah.
Now, now you say you feel like you let Hillary down. Now I will
Both.
definitely
I felt
agree
both.
with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I don't feel like I let people down. I feel like they let me down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I bust my ass
Mm-hmm.
on that campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it was
Mm-hmm.
more than the Obama campaign, and I really bust my ass on the re-election for President Obama
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
No resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with Hillary, like you said, it was different. I was there from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was there before she announced. I
Mm-hmm.
was, I had almost 12 states under my belt before she announced to pull things together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And,
Mm-hmm.
then the announcement, then the primary states,
Mm-hmm.
running the southern states.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my encounter with her
Mm.
kept growing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The incident in Atlanta for the African American lunch,
Mm-hmm.
where the protesters
Mm-hmm.
came out
Mm-hmm.
and literally almost ran over John Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
which pissed me off. And that's when
Yes,
I
it
beeline.
should have.
And it's actually in that video, that documentary, you
Yeah.
see me.
Yeah.
I beeline it
Yeah.
to get John Lewis, protect him,
Yeah.
get it out of the way. And what people don't realize, those same protesters were behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
taking pictures with her in her face, telling her like on some real true fake shit.
Yeah.
You were doing it for the clout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember that, but then I remember all the other incidents.
Yeah.
Right, I was with her when Prince died.
Wow.
Right, and
Wow.
she walked in and was like, Richard, did you hear?
Good Lord.
Prince just passed away. And I was like, what?
Jesus.
And
Yeah.
she was like, yes.
Yeah.
And she went over to her friend, Homa
Yeah.
was like, Richard hadn't heard. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm busy.
Yeah.
But we were doing a gun violence
Yeah.
event
Yeah.
in Connecticut.
Yep.
Right? Like, but her authenticity,
Yep.
she was so likable, right?
Yes.
Like, and the picture that the press painted was something totally different.
She-
So when you
yeah.
talk about letting her down,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yes.
she would have been a phenomenal president.
She would have been a phenomenal president, and just to give you like a sense of who she is, give folks a sense of who she is, who maybe hadn't spent time with her. Like when I decided to turn down a job with her campaign to go work for the Obama campaign, there were people who said, like, you've been with her for, at that point I had been interning, volunteering for 2 years. You're in the pack. You know who the person is that's very high up who helped you be able to come here, and this isn't a good look to just go basically jump ship. And when she wins and she's the president, like, this isn't gonna look well for you. People said that to me. And fast forward a few weeks later, I'm in Iowa. The candidates are there for some event. And I'm there with my Obama shirt on, my Obama gear, like everything. And Hillary Clinton walks by, and she sees me. She runs over and gives me the biggest hug with all of this Obama stuff on. And she said, "It's so good to see you. What do they have you doing here? Where are you working? Where are you living? How are you adjusting? I'm so glad that you did this. This is going to be one of the best experiences of your life. I'm so glad that you're staying involved." Right? She didn't care. She didn't care. Last time she saw me, I was at a fundraiser for her, helping to staff it.
Yeah.
She didn't care. And this is the same woman that wrote me and my wife a letter when we got married. We got married while Hillary was running for president. She wrote us a note on our wedding day and wrote us a very nice note when the campaign was over. And here I am feeling like I let her down, but she's still being gracious
Yeah.
in that defeat. And so, that's what it was like for me right after that race.
So, you know, I think it's something that we can definitely get into on the next episode when we compare the feeling that you felt then
Mm-hmm.
versus the feeling that you felt or feel now.
Right. Right.
Now that we have another loss
Right.
from a woman president, from a woman nominee,
Losing to Donald Trump.
losing
And
to
this is-
Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is the second time I've been able to be a part of
Yeah.
of 3 campaigns against Donald Trump,
Um,
and each time I lost, it was with a woman,
So
an extraordinary woman.
I think right now, again, we want to close out this episode as we always do.
Yeah.
Shout out to our guy, Kobe Bean Bryant, and
Yes.
his Mamba mentality.
Yes.
The 5 pillars: passion, obsession, resilience,
Yes.
relentlessness, and fearlessness.
Yep.
Who are you giving your Mamba mentality to?
I want to give mine. I was thinking about that. I mean, I want to give it to. I give it to Hillary. We were just talking
Oh.
about her, because part of the Mamba mentality is the consistency to consistently show up,
Yeah.
to be able to take a hit, to be able to get back up, never be taken off your game, and consistently deliver. And my God, how many times has she done that throughout her career? And how many people's lives have been made better because of that? So
Actually, I'm going to second that.
Mhm.
Right, like that's our girl.
yeah,
Right, like a lot of people try to talk about her, discredit her in some form or fashion, but in my mind, I think she was the most qualified person to ever run for president. Y'all say Kamala, right, because she was vice president, but
I would agree with that. The only person whose resume maybe comes close to Hillary's was H.W. Bush. But even with H.W. Bush, he held a lot of important jobs. Don't get me wrong, was definitely qualified to be the president. But a lot of his jobs, he didn't hold them that long.
Yeah.
Like CIA director and UN ambassador, it was kind of like a year
yeah.
that he was there. It wasn't that long. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say that she was the most qualified person, certainly of our lifetime, to ever run for president.
So this is episode 2. We close out. With our Mamba Mentality Award going to Secretary Hillary Clinton, Hillary
Yes.
Rodham Clinton,
Yes.
HRC.
HRC.
As we called her on the email chain.
Yes.
This is Maroon Bison Presents, the Southern Comfort Podcast. I'm Richard McDaniel.
And I'm Kevin Harris.
Good night, everybody, and appreciate you for coming. Talk to you later.
Yep.